Welcome to the Clara Monroe series. This is Book 1, Echoes of the Past, Chapter 1. Each installment continues the investigation while deepening the long arc beneath it. For the full experience, begin with Book 1 and listen in order. Now, Chapter 1. Chapter 1, The Quiet House. The call came at 4:12 a.m. Clara Monroe was already awake. She lay flat on her back with her hands resting on her ribs, as if she could keep her breathing from making noise. The room was dark enough that the corners didn't exist. The radiator clicked behind the wall, a small metallic patience that never quite became comfort. Sleep had left at 3. It often did. She didn't chase it. Chasing turned into bargaining. Bargaining turned into hope. Hope was a kind of softness she had trained out of herself years ago. The phone vibrated on the nightstand, not loud, just a private insistence. She reached for it on the second ring. Monroe. "Sorry to pull you early," Sergeant Halpern said. His voice was steady, but there was a thinness in it, like he'd already seen something he didn't want to describe. "We've got a body? Suburban? Maple Crest Drive? Husband found her?" Clara sat up. "How long?" "Uniforms on scene 15 minutes, ME en route." "Obvious?" A pause. Halpern didn't fill pauses unless he had to. "No." Clara swung her legs out of bed and put her feet on the cold floor. "Text me the address." "You got it." The line went dead. She dressed the way she always did, like the clothing was a uniform and not a choice. Navy slacks, white shirt, blazer with the gun weight at her hip. Hair pulled back tight enough to make her scalp sting, a small pain she controlled on purpose. In the bathroom mirror, her face looked like it belonged to someone who kept her promises. Composed. Pale, unremarkable. Control was not something she felt. It was something she maintained. She didn't make coffee. She didn't turn on a lamp. She moved through the apartment without waking it, the way she moved through most rooms. Outside, the air was sharp with early fall. The street lights made the sidewalks look clean. Her car smelled faintly of paper and old fabric. She drove with the radio off. In the dark, every stoplight felt personal. Maple Crest was one of those neighborhoods that pretended crime was something that happened to other people, somewhere else, in other zip codes, on the wrong side of someone's story. The house was white brick, symmetrical, expensive without imagination. Shrubs trimmed into compliance. Windows that didn't reveal anything. Patrol lights washed the street in slow red pulses, as if the whole block had a heartbeat it didn't deserve. Clara parked behind the first cruiser and ducked under the tape. Halpern met her halfway up the walkway. His tie was crooked. He hadn't shaved. His eyes were tired in a way sleep wouldn't fix. "Victim's name is Evelyn Ward," he said. 42, 2 kids. Husband found her in the study. "Kids?" "At a sleepover. Neighbors confirm." Clara nodded once, a small motion that didn't invite conversation. "What about entry?" she asked. Halpern lifted his shoulders. Back door was locked. No broken windows. Front door was still deadbolted when uniforms got here. Husband was outside on the porch, phone in hand. "Any blood on him?" "Not that we've seen." Clara looked past Halpern at the quiet street. Houses sat with their porches and their flags and their closed curtains. No one was out. No one was watching. Everyone would claim later they'd heard something strange, but thought it was the wind. "Where is he?" she asked. "In the kitchen." Clara stepped inside. The house smelled faintly of coffee and something metallic underneath it. The air conditioning hummed at a steady, polite volume, like the house was trying not to be involved. Everything was tidy. Family photos lined the hallway in evenly spaced frames. Vacations, graduation caps, smiles that looked practiced, the kind of images that were proof of happiness, not evidence of it. Clara passed them without slowing. Her eyes caught details anyway. A child's missing front tooth, a woman's hand on a man's shoulder, a dog with clouded eyes, a cake with candles arranged in a neat line. The kitchen was bright. Daniel Ward sat at the table in a fitted t-shirt and sweatpants, posture rigid, hands clasped so tightly his knuckles had blanched. He looked like someone who had been told to sit and had followed the instruction like it might keep the world from moving again. When Clara entered, his gaze snapped to her. He looked at her as though she were a verdict he hadn't earned yet. "I'm Detective Monroe," she said. His eyes flickered. Recognition, relief, fear. It was too early to name which one. Sometimes it was all three. "I didn't hear anything," he said immediately. "I was asleep upstairs. I came down for water and—" His voice fractured. He pressed his lips together until the tremor stopped. She was at her desk. Clara let the silence sit between them. Silence was useful. People stepped into it when they wanted it to go away. "Did you call anyone before 911? She asked. "No." "Touch anything?" "No, I checked her pulse." "Where?" "Her neck." "Which side?" He blinked like the question was unfair. "Right." Clara watched his throat move as he swallowed. His eyes were wet but controlled. "We'll need your hands bagged for trace," she said. His mouth opened slightly, surprised by the formality, the bureaucracy of it. "It's routine," she added. It was. Halpern gave a technician a nod, and the paper bags came out, plain and humiliating. Daniel Ward didn't protest. He stared at his hands as they were covered, as if they no longer belonged to him. Clara kept her tone even. "Walk me through your night," she said. "From dinner onward." He began. Too smooth at first, like he'd rehearsed the timeline in his head. Chicken and salad, a glass of wine. Kids sent to a friend's house, a movie. Evelyn went to grade papers. He stayed up watching sports highlights. Bed around 11. Clara listened for the places where his voice caught, where he paused too long, where his story made room for someone else. But Daniel's narrative was clean, too clean. "Did Evelyn seem upset?" she asked. "She was tired," he said. "She always got like that this time of year. Back to school, parent emails, you know." Clara didn't correct him. She did know. She knew about exhaustion that masqueraded as ordinary. "Any recent arguments?" His eyes darted away, then back. "No, not like that." "Any recent contact with anyone new?" Clara asked. "Old friends, students, parents?" He shook his head. "No." Clara studied him for a moment longer. Then she turned away without offering comfort. Comfort was a promise. She didn't make promises she couldn't keep. The study was at the back of the house. Mahogany desk, built-in shelves, a single lamp that cast a tight circle of yellow light. Evelyn Ward sat upright in the chair. At first glance, it looked like sleep. Her chin tilted slightly forward. One hand rested palm down on an open notebook. The other hung loose at her side, fingers curled as if she'd let go of something. Then the line at her throat asserted itself. Her throat was cut cleanly from left to right. Clara stopped in the doorway and took in the geometry. The cut was deliberate, deep, controlled. Whoever did it knew where to press and how long to hold. No hesitation marks, No ragged edge. There was very little blood. That was wrong. It made the scene feel staged, like someone had removed the mess but left the message. A dark stain sat beneath the chair, but not the volume one would expect. Some of the blood had been caught in a crystal bowl placed carefully on the desk, positioned like an offering. Halpern exhaled behind her. Jesus. Not here, Clara said quietly. It wasn't a reprimand, it was a boundary. She set them wherever she could. The victim's eyes were open, not wide, not startled. Simply open, as if she'd been told to look at something and had complied. No signs of struggle. No overturned furniture. No splintered rage. The chair was aligned with the desk, like she'd rolled it in gently and sat down to work. Clara stepped closer, careful of the floor. The bowl was decorative crystal, now half filled with thickened red. Someone had wanted to keep it. Clara leaned in without touching. The blood had begun to clot along the edges. The surface was dull, not reflective. It had sat long enough to cool. Time of death? She asked. M.E.'s estimating between midnight and 2, Halpern said. Based on body temp, we'll know more. Clara's gaze moved to the notebook beneath Evelyn's hand. One sentence had been written repeatedly down the page, in a careful hand that got less certain as it traveled downward. I remember, I remember, I remember. Again and again. The lines closer to the bottom were heavier. The ink pressed hard enough to leave dents in the paper, as if the writer had needed the words to be physical. Clara felt something tighten low in her chest, a small, internal flinch she didn't let reach her face. Bag the notebook, she said. A tech stepped forward. Clara circled the desk slowly, eyes searching. On the bookshelf behind Evelyn sat rows of hardcovers, arranged by height. One empty space near the center drew attention without asking for it. The dust around it was disturbed, clean-edged. Something had been removed recently. What was here? Clara asked. Halpern checked his phone as if the answer might be waiting inside it. Husband says nothing's missing. Clara didn't look at him. Something's missing, she said. There was a difference between a house that had been lived in and a house that had been curated. This room was curated. The books were props. The desk was a display of competence. And that empty space was a decision. By 6:30, the house had begun to fill with technicians and quiet movement. The kind of movement that didn't disturb the living neighbors but left fingerprints on the dead. Daniel Ward sat in the kitchen with paper bags on his hands and a fixed gaze on the table, as if he could anchor himself to the grain of the wood. Clara returned to the study. She stood again in the doorway and tried to imagine the sequence. Evelyn seated, writing. Door opens. No scream. No overturned chair. Trust then, or resignation. The killer steps close. Very close. Close enough that Evelyn would have smelled them, would have heard their breathing, would have recognized something in the way they moved. Left to right. Bowl positioned in advance or after, placed with care while Evelyn's blood cooled. Clara closed her eyes briefly. Not to pray, not to steady herself, just to remove the visuals and see what remained. When she opened them, she noticed something near the edge of the desk by the lamp base. A faint smear. Not blood. Ash. A thin gray crescent, delicate and fine. Clara leaned down. It wasn't the coarse ash of cheap cigarettes. It was soft, almost powdery. It spoke of something rolled or packed with care, expensive tobacco, or something filtered. "Does Ward smoke?" she asked without turning. "No," Halpern said. "Claims neither of them do. Collect it." A tech nodded and moved in. Clara stepped back and let her eyes travel. On the far wall hung a framed photograph separate from the others. It was not staged vacation joy. It was older, a different paper quality. Evelyn as a teenager, 17 maybe, next to an older boy who looked enough like her to be undeniable. Siblings. The boy's arm rested loosely over her shoulders. He was smiling, but not fully, like he had considered not smiling and then chosen to, because the camera demanded it. Clara stared at the boy's eyes. There was something familiar in the stillness of them, the quiet calculation, the refusal to give more than necessary. "Family?" she asked. Halpern checked again, the way he did when he was tired and trying to be thorough. "Younger brother, died 10 years ago. Car accident." Clara didn't look away from the photograph. How old was he? 22. Clara did the math automatically. 22. The same age her own brother had been when he left. Left. That was the word she used, even though other people had words that tasted more like truth. Gone. Lost. Buried. Erased. She made herself look away first. The interview process began after sunrise. Clara and Halpern rotated through the neighbors with uniforms, gathering the usual inventory of suburban certainty. No one had heard anything. One neighbor's dog had barked around one, but it always barked. A car had driven past at 2, but people drove past sometimes. A light had been on in the study earlier than usual, but Evelyn graded papers late. No one saw anyone. No one knew anything. Everything was normal until it wasn't, and then it was always normal again. Back in the kitchen, Clara asked Daniel Ward for his phone. He hesitated, then slid it across the table with the carefulness of someone offering a fragile object. She scanned the call log. No outgoing calls between 11 and 4. No strange missed calls. His texts were mundane. Grocery list. A message to the neighbor about the kids' sleepover. A reminder from a dental office. Clara handed it back. "Any cameras?" she asked. "We have a doorbell camera," Daniel said quickly, "and one in the garage for packages." "Where's the footage stored?" "Cloud. It should be in the app." Clara looked to Halpern. "Get it pulled now, not later." Halpern nodded and stepped away. Clara watched Daniel's face. The muscles in his jaw were tight. His eyes darted to the hallway, like the study was a trap he could fall into again if he looked too long. "Daniel," Clara said. He flinched slightly at the use of his first name. "When did you last see your wife alive?" He stared at the table. "Around 10:30. She was in the study. She said she had papers." "What papers?" "Essays. She had a stack." Clara pictured the desk. There were no stacks, no scattered grading, no red pen bleeding over student paragraphs, just the notebook, just the bowl, just the lamp's tight light. "Did she seem frightened?" Clara asked. "No." "Distracted?" "She was quiet," he said. "But she was always quiet when she worked." Clara nodded once. "Did she ever talk about her brother?" she asked. Daniel's eyes lifted. A small shock of confusion, then something guarded. "No, not really. Why?" Clara didn't answer. Because dead people didn't need their missing books removed. Because someone had put a bowl on the desk like a ritual. Because she knew the sound of a message that wasn't meant for the victim. "Who has access to this house?" Clara asked instead. Daniel swallowed. "Just us. And the kids. We have a cleaner. She comes Tuesdays." "Name?" "Marisol. I can get you her number." "You will." He nodded too fast. Clara watched him for another beat, then turned away. By late morning, the ward's house had become a controlled ecosystem. Evidence markers, latex gloves, quiet voices. Outside, sunlight moved across the lawn like it didn't know what it was touching. Clara returned to the precinct with the first wave of items logged and bagged. She moved through the building the way she moved through most places, without friction. People stepped aside. Doors opened. She didn't thank anyone. Her office was narrow, functional, a glass window that didn't quite count as transparency, a desk with more files than space. A single-frame photo turned slightly away from the door so it couldn't be read at a glance. She sat and opened the preliminary background file. Evelyn Ward, high school English teacher, no record, no lawsuits, no financial distress, married 18 years, no known enemies. Clara disliked that phrase. Everyone had someone who wished them harm. The question was, who had patience? She flipped to the next page. A list of recent communications pulled from Evelyn's school email, pending warrants for full access, but the administration had already provided surface-level logs, parent messages, staff memos, a couple of flagged student complaints about grades. Nothing that screamed blood in a bowl. Her pen hovered over the notebook evidence number on the log. She imagined the words again. I remember. Memory as a weapon, memory as confession. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She watched it ring twice before answering. Monroe. Silence. Not empty silence. Breathing. Slow. Controlled. Familiar in its discipline. Clara held the phone tighter. Who is this? The breathing continued. Then softly, a click, as if the person on the other end had shifted the phone against their cheek. Clara didn't speak again. She didn't fill the space for them. The call disconnected. She lowered the phone slowly. Her hand didn't shake. Her pulse stayed even. She had practiced evenness like other people practiced prayer. A moment later, a text message arrived from the same number. A single image. She tapped it open. It was a photograph of the ward study, taken from inside the room. Before the police arrived, Evelyn at the desk, the bowl already in place, the lamp's light tight and yellow, the notebook open under her hand. Clara's throat went dry. The timestamp on the image read 2:14 a.m. There should not have been a photo, not from that angle. Not from inside the room, not before uniforms arrived. Beneath the photo was a single line of text. Do you remember? Clara stared at the words until they stopped looking like language. Her office felt smaller, as if the walls had leaned in without permission. She placed the phone face down on the desk. Then she turned it over again and looked at the image a second time, forcing herself to see details. The bowl, the chair, the neatness, and something else, near the bookshelf, close to the missing space. A sliver of pale paper caught in the shadow, half tucked behind the row of books like a bookmark left on purpose. It hadn't been there when she stood in the doorway, or it had, and her eyes hadn't wanted to see it. Clara picked up the phone and enlarged the image until the pixels broke. The pale sliver sharpened into a shape, a small card, angled outward as if someone had placed it to be found. She couldn't read it, but she could see the corner of a symbol, 3 short strokes, parallel, like tally marks drawn in dark ink. Her stomach tightened. Not fear, not exactly. Recognition's colder cousin. Clara set the phone down again, very carefully, like it might bruise. She didn't call the number back. She didn't tell Halpern yet. She stared at the evidence log until the lines blurred. Then she reached into her desk drawer and took out a small notebook she never entered into any system. She opened it to the first blank page. Her pen hovered. For a moment, she thought of writing something simple, a date, a name, a fact. Instead, she wrote 3 short strokes in the same direction she'd seen on the card. And beneath them, without meaning to, without deciding, as if her hand remembered even when she didn't want it to, I remember. Her pen stopped. Her breath stayed quiet. In the hallway outside her office, someone laughed at something unrelated. A normal sound, careless and bright. Clara closed the notebook and slid it back into the drawer. Then she picked up her phone and took a screenshot of the image, just in case it disappeared. As she did, the screen flickered, briefly, subtly, like a second photo was trying to load behind the first. For a split second, she saw another angle, a reflection in the study window, a figure standing outside in the dark, just beyond the glass, watching. Then the screen stabilized, and the original image returned. Clara stared at it. Her face remained composed, but inside, something small shifted its weight, not panic, not yet. Just the quiet sense that the case had already entered her life long before the body did, and that whoever was asking the question wasn't interested in Evelyn Ward at all. They were interested in her. Chapter 1 ends here. The next piece waits in Chapter 2. Until then.